let me just take care of the little boy and I will be out to get the mom. Give me a moment. And I picked him up and put him on the couch and put a little blanket over him, just like he looked like he was sleeping. And I held his hand, I closed my eyes and I said, all right, God, I've never asked for anything and I'll never ask for anything again. But I will do anything for the rest of my life to be in your service, to be the best person I can be. I just need you to have him open his eyes when I open mine. Whatever it's going to take, I'll do anything. And so I sat there and I waited.
Welcome to the Awaken Magazine podcast, where influential conscious leaders come to share their real stories behind their spiritual journeys and how they're helping others awaken to love. I'm your host, David Trotter, and today I'm excited to introduce you to Michelle Dutro. She's an Air Force veteran, a former firefighter, and now the founder of the Inner North Star Retreat Center. It's a wellness sanctuary that sits atop 20 acres in Julian, California. Now, in this conversation, we talk all about her career path. How did she make all of these transitions from Air Force to firefighter? Why would she ever become a firefighter in her 30s and then start a retreat center? It's a very inspiring story. You'll also be moved by this moment that she shares with us as she's a firefighter, as she's holding a child in her arms, and how she made the decision in that moment to shift from crisis response to preventative healing and wellness. And then she shares with us how she developed the vision for the Inner North Star Retreat Center and how she developed the property. She talks about all of these incredible spaces around the property where you can go and sit and take in the expansive view. And you will probably be a bit surprised by who was the most influential person in her life as she was envisioning this entire property and retreat center. Hey, if you enjoy conversations that go beyond the surface, spiritual conversations, you're in the right place. The question is, are you subscribed to the Awaken Magazine podcast? Whether you're listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify, or you're watching on YouTube, click subscribe so that you don't miss a single episode. We release incredible, inspiring interviews each and every week. All right, hey, let's dive into this conversation with Michelle Dutro. Michelle, it is great to be with you today. Thanks so much for taking time to hang with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. It's been a minute since I've been behind a microphone from my own podcast. So this is a great kickoff, relaunch for me. So I love it.
Yeah, you have such a fascinating journey from being in the Air Force to being a firefighter to now, of course, being a coach, an author, a podcaster, and a retreat center owner and founder. I am so curious to go back to your childhood, actually, to go, what did little Michelle think she was going to grow up to do or be in this world? You know, maybe whether it was a certain path of vocation or maybe what you thought life was going to be like. Maybe take us back to those growing up years and what were you thinking?
This is an easy one. Absolutely nothing. I am telling you what, I am fascinated by all the people that I was going to be an astronaut. I was going to be a movie star. And I reflect back thinking, did I even think about my life? Did I even future think? Did that go on back then? I don't know. First of all, there was no such thing as life coaching back then or mentorship or any of it. You know, where now you got to have a plan for your life and you have to have a vision. And I'm telling you what, no, I think I was excited about, Captain Crunch the next morning. There was absolutely zero plan, which did wind up leading me into the Air Force all the way through my first year of college, realizing I'm spending more time playing volleyball than I am in class. And at some point, I can't be doing this when I'm 40, unless I was a pro volleyball player, but I don't even know how much they make. So there was never, it wasn't, there wasn't a plan. It wasn't even, there was a thought that I should have one. And that's the honest truth. No, nope.
It's so
Mm-mm.
funny. In my school in Kentucky, they would go around like every year with a pad to go, what would you like to be this year when you grow up? I
Wow.
remember in first grade, I think it was,
Wow.
part of your record, like every year you're changing it. First grade, garbage man. I literally said that. My mom was like, "Okay, all right. Well, we've got a path here for you," which, I we need people who collect our trash, and I actually love to pick up random weird things on the side of the road. So maybe that was part of my path. But
Oh,
I'm
goodness.
curious about
Huh.
the unfolding of your purpose, your calling in life. You mentioned that you enlisted in the Air Force. What motivated you to begin that path?
There's plenty of better ways to accomplish this, I can assure you, but as I mentioned, I was playing volleyball more than I was doing anything, and I sat there one day with myself on the beach and said, "Michelle, you've got you've gotta have a plan here. This is not you're not going to class, this." In fact, to tell you how bad this was, I took an oceanography class I mean, I lived in Santa Barbara. I could go to the beach anytime, but I took oceanography because I knew they would have field trips and we'd spend more time at the beach. When I asked, "How many trips are there?" and they said, "Oh, there are no there are no trips. We're never going to the beach." I immediately dropped the class. It's just not so, in my conversation with myself, I said, "You've got to get some discipline. You need to figure out a way to get some discipline with your life because your current trajectory is not a good one." If I would have thought I should be a trash man, that would have been something. I didn't even have that going for me. So I sat there and thought, who could instill discipline? I think that's the military. And I don't have any family members. I have no friends. I have zero connection to this. But I did think of all the people that are not going to give you an option on whether or not to be disciplined, it's going to be the military. So, and the only reason that this wound up being the Air Force, because my first choice was the Marines. I thought if you're going to go, go. In reality, if you're going to, well, they all had, each of them, the Army, the Marines, and the Navy had a 6-year commitment. And I thought, I can't even commit 4 years to college. How the Air Force was 4 years, and that was the only reason was I thought, "All right, okay." And I tried negotiating with all of them, and they said, "No, 6 years or forget it." So, off to the Air Force I went. And when I say there's a better way, anybody who's been in the military knows because all branches do this. It's the first night you're there, and it's called shakedown, where they show up and scare the life out of you, about 3 in the morning. They start off being your friend and you think, "Oh my goodness, this is amazing," basic training, how they're chummy and laughy and joking with you. And then at 3 in the morning comes around and screaming and everybody's out of the bed and in your face. And it's a whole thing. And you have that moment going, I bet I could have found a book on discipline. I could have had another way to get here than these next 4 years. But, no regrets. It was great. But that's how that came to be.
And through those 4 years, did you cultivate discipline in your life?
Mm. Here's what I cultivated. I cultivated this idea that everybody would want to strive for excellence, and in basic training, then through tech school, and I was stationed in Florida, then I was stationed in Alaska. And in every step along the way, and this hasn't changed, but, I bet there's a better way to do things. And I would bring that up, "Hey, I'm just kind of observing the way things are going here, and let me tell you how well that is received." Right. For those old enough to know Private Benjamin, it was real close to that of, "I'm not sure why you think you're here or where you read in a brochure that we're after opinions on how to improve the military, but we're not after any of that. In fact, we've been handling it quite well without you." But I didn't quit. I mean, I never stopped. I just thought, well, I need to try a different approach. They just need to hear from a different angle of how things could be. And so anyway, maybe that discipline, yes, discipline absolutely has been key. I've been up every day between 4:30 and 5 my whole life, and having a plan and having an action plan and where you're going and a trajectory. That's not an option in the military. You have to have a strategy for what the mission is ahead. So that never waned. But I will tell you, it gave me a lot of opportunity for how things could be different or how things could be better, and even when people aren't asking. So,
And
but it was
so
good.
what led you then to ultimately become a firefighter for a season of life? Like, take us from Air Force to firefighter. What happened in between that time?
So I was I was in sales, corporate sales. After I left the military, I went into fields that were I was in ground radio electronics, so I stayed in fields that were kind of electronics related. It was just easy. And then in my same conversation, which I have with myself a lot to this day even, is this the best thing I could be doing with my life? Is this the greatest, highest use of my life? Could there be anything any better? And I thought, I don't know that I want my tombstone to say Michelle sold more widgets than anyone. And there's nothing wrong with a career in sales. Do not get me wrong at all. I just knew for me that wasn't my purpose or calling. And so I thought, well, if I want to be useful and helpful in this world, who's the most useful, helpful person? Well, that's a doctor. I should become a doctor. That's the most useful, helpful person that there is. And I thought, well, okay, I'm 33. Let's do some math here. First of all, that's the devotion to school that didn't really work out well for me. So I thought, all right, let's take that down a notch. How about a nurse? I could become a nurse. That's what I should do. I could probably handle that schooling. Very useful, very helpful. Is that the best thing? Well, I could be an ER nurse. That's okay. If I was an ER nurse, is there anything more useful and helpful? And then I thought, well, somebody has to get people to the ER. That would be I'll become a firefighter, in which I thought all you had to do was interview for a job like any other. I had no idea the rigmarole that you have to go through to get hired. I applied for 2 years all over the place. This is when I lived in the state of Washington, all over. And the department that I finally got hired with, when they put out the call saying that they're going to be hiring, 1,400 people show up for that department, of which they're hiring 10.
And what
So
city was this?
that's Kent, and I literally interviewed everywhere.
Mm.
So this was my last and final. At this point, I'm 35 years old. I mean, I could easily be somebody's mom that's
Mhm.
going through the fire academy, 18 years old. So, but that was it. I said this would be the greatest, highest use, and so I pursued it for a couple of years and finally got hired.
My goodness. And how long were you a firefighter? What did that include? Like, what did you learn? This sounds just mind-blowing at 35 to do something like this.
It was a good challenge, which is probably my nemesis because I'm competitive to a fault. So as soon as somebody says, "Well, Michelle, you really can't do that," or "You're too old," or "You're not this," or "You're not that," then it turns in from a want to a must. Okay, well now the challenge is down. So it was very challenging. At any age, it's very tough. I mean, the fire academy is 9 weeks, and rightfully so. They put you through the ropes. One, there's not a fire. There's not going to be a burning building, and the fire's going to look at you and go, "Oh, we have a 5'4" female, 35-year-old gal out. Turn it down." She clearly is not going to be able to put this out. Guys, let's lower the flames. So understandably, I needed to make sure that not only I could do the job so that no one else got injured or I didn't put anybody else on the crew in harm's way, but I had 2 little girls. I wanted to come home at the end of the shift. So if I could not do the job to the same capability of anyone else out there, then I'm glad that the fire academy was as hard as it was, that which was very intentional of saying, let's just see if this 35-year-old 5'4" female can make it. And they threw down the gauntlet of a challenge, I'll tell you. So, but it was good. I mean, like I said, if I could have made it through, then I would rather have known that, because that wouldn't have been a safe environment for me or for anyone else.
I'm curious because now, as a coach, as a retreat center founder, where life development, personal development is of a high value for you,
Mhm.
obviously. At what point along this journey did mindfulness, consciousness, spirituality, however you would define it, how did that come into your life? Was that something that you grew up with, or did it develop over time simultaneously? Well, because we're hearing about your career path, but take us into your interior world. How did that path unfold as well?
Not at all. When I said the highlight of my life was, Captain Crunch or what flavor of Pop-Tarts, there wasn't a and no offense to my family, I love them dearly. That just wasn't the focus, or, life planning or life path, that just wasn't the thing. But what happened was a call when this was, towards the end of my time here in the fire department, and it's the worst call that a firefighter can ever get, which is, CPR in progress for a child. And and the majority of people in the fire department have kids, and the first thought in your mind is, "What if this was my child?" Right? And so we're rushing off, and it was a scene that you could imagine in your mind. It was the neighbor who was actually doing CPR on this 7-year-old little boy, taken over from the mom who was hysterical, and we were there, a whole 'nother crew was there, the medics were there, and, in your mind, you're saying, "I would never want someone to give up on my child, so you just don't quit." And we went on for a longer time than you could imagine, and the medics just saying, "We can't, there's nothing more we can do here." And so the crew got everything cleaned up, and outside, the mom and the neighbors, everybody was obviously outside for what was happening. And so I said, let me just take care of the little boy, and I will be out to get the mom. Give me a moment." And I picked him up and put him on the couch and put a little blanket over him, just like he looked like he was sleeping. And I kneeled down on the side of the couch and held his hand. His name's Jacob. And I held his hand. I closed my eyes and I said, "All right, God, I've never asked for anything, and I'll never ask for anything again. But I will do anything for the rest of my life to be in your service, to be the best person I can be, to do the greatest, highest good in whatever capacity that is every day of the rest of my life. And I just need you to have him open his eyes when I open mine. Whatever it's going to take, I'll do anything." And so I sat there and I waited to make sure that God had enough time to respond to me in that moment. And I opened my eyes, and I mean to tell you, I believed to the core of my soul that little Jacob was going to open his eyes. I truly did. And he didn't. And so that that was the beginning of a lot of questioning for myself about the way the world works and why things happen the way they do. But most importantly for me was, why am I willing to bargain or make a trade in order to be the best and highest person I can be? Why would I not just be that? Why would my response be, well, if I didn't get what I wanted, then I'm going to what? Just go be a slacker, go live a lesser than life, or I'm just going to have an excuse for the rest of my life for why I'm not being the best person I can be? It made no sense to me. And so about 2 weeks later, the parents came to the station. Very unusual. First of all, no one's ever heard of that happening. But as firefighters, you only work about 9 days a month. You rotate shifts all the time. So the odds that they would just stop by the station, that we would all happen to be there, the exact crew that was working that day, also unheard of. And the mom brought a 5x7 photo of Jacob. She said, not even sure why I brought this, but I did. And I thought you would want to know the outcome, that he had a weird flu virus, had been given a couple of rounds of antibiotics, and he had played t-ball that afternoon. And I was just coming in to take a little nap with him, woke up from the nap and realized he wasn't breathing. It was a day like any other day, just had a flu. And she said some virus surrounded his heart, and there was nothing anybody could have done. There was nothing more you all could have done. And she had the option in that moment to be full of resentment and blame and hatred and all kinds of things, and showed up with so much grace and love and gratitude for what we tried to do. It was yet another opportunity for me to stand back and say, how do I want to show up in life? And what an incredible moment to witness, to say, if I'm going to commit to, I'm going to be the best person I can be, I have to take this moment in to say, this is bigger than I don't even know that my heart could have possibly been as big as what hers was. And so it was shortly thereafter, I quit the fire department and decided that I would rather be on the preventative side, helping people avoid things from being a complete catastrophe and things going wrong, rather than responding to them after the fact. So I didn't have a plan. I just said, that's it. I'm going to figure this out, and spent a good deal of time on Google saying, Google, now what should I do with my life? Which nets you some pretty funny answers
I
back
know
then.
you went through a process of developing quite a few for lack of a better word, certifications and training and adding different modalities to your life. What was the first modality or training that you jumped into after that?
The first one was a biofeedback, and that was, again, by synchronicity. I went on my quest of what should I do with my life. It's funny how, and you and I spoke earlier about synchronicities and things showing up when we put it out there, that if you're paying attention and you act on what's showing up in front of you, there's a reason for that. And this firewalking school kept showing up, which I was a firefighter. Why in the world would I walk barefoot on flaming hot coals? It seemed like the most absurd thing anybody could ever. And so I would go look at something else, and then I would go back to it. And I'd look at something else, and I'd go back to it. And a week later, I'm at the firewalking school. And that was the biggest. There was another of my pivot points in life, was we did what at the time was crazy to me: angel channeling and, meditation to mediumship and all the things, chanting over flaming cow dung. I mean, the list goes on. And for the other 14 gals that were there, it was, another typical Thursday for them. For me, I truly thought we were on candid camera. I thought, there's no way this is there's just no way. There's no way this is happening. We did a sweat lodge that I tried to tunnel out of when no one was looking. I truly thought I was going to melt and be the Wicked Witch. There was just a hat left, but I didn't have a hat. The whole thing was nuts. Walked on fire the last day. It just kept going. And I'll tell you, somewhere along the way, I became more and more internally at peace as a byproduct, without anyone saying, and now you're going to feel more at peace. It was truly just somehow this evolution of an awakening of, there's a whole nother world of possibility out there that I had never heard of nor considered. And so this has been a part of my life, and something that I encourage people to do as a way of life is never stop learning. Put yourself out there. Go find something extreme. Go find something that you think is the craziest idea ever, and throw yourself into the middle of it. Never get to the point that you think you have an understanding of all things in this world. That's really when the trouble shows up. And so that was it. I came back home, and it was synchronicity after synchronicity of this one specific biofeedback device. So I became a biofeedback specialist. And then it was layering things. I was in private practice for about 10 years after, helping people with nutrition and better health. And really what it boiled down to was mindset, was all things at the end of the day came down to, with an internal struggle of a lack of meaning or fulfillment in life that wound up playing out like a spider web in a million different ways. But the core of it was, I don't really know that I have a reason for being here, and nothing feels very fulfilling. And, now I don't know about my marriage, and my kids are crazy, and my job I don't like, and the neighborhood we're in I can't stand, and now my health is failing. And so instead of fixing all 10 of 15 of those things, let's look at the core of why you're here in this lifetime, and what brings you meaning, and what do you value, and why. And so that kind of bore out of all of my time working one-on-one with people to, what I primarily do now in helping people find their purpose and why they're here in life, and what gets in the way of that. No
Mhm.
different than you. Same.
Yeah, yeah. As you were simultaneously, I assume, raising your daughter, you have two daughters, is that
Two
right?
daughters. Mhm.
How was that shifting the way that you were approaching your parenting or relationship with them as you were, like developing these different skills or different way of seeing the world? How did that impact your parenting relationship as well?
I know that as soon as you make something with a kid a must believe, this is the way things are, that they are typically going to hit the reverse and go the opposite direction. So I was never that. It was more of, hey, there's an angel channeling thing going on this weekend. You guys want to go? Hey, there's this thing happening over here. Do you guys want to join this? And I used to teach a lot of classes in my house. And so there would be a feng shui expert that would come through. And so they were witness and part of all of that. They didn't really have a choice. It was my world. But it was always as an open opportunity. Just, oh, here's another thing going on. So they to this day are very open and accepting to all things, which I appreciate more than anything. Like I said, if there's one thing we can all do, it's just stay open. Pay
Mhm.
attention and stay open.
Mhm. Talk to me about the vision that came to you for a retreat center. Was this something that began to bubble up early on, or was it just like an aha moment? Take us
No,
through that.
no, it sure was. You're right. In my time of working with people, I I knew that one of the big challenges that I had was getting people to look at their life from a different perspective. Was that it's not about the events that happen to us, rather it's the meaning we assign them. And so if you're trying to assign different meaning to an event, that requires you to have a different perspective. And if we're having a conversation, we're in session for an hour, and we're talking about changing your perception, not just on that event, but then that event will be dominoes, because then that effectively is going to change your perception on a million other things, right? Because this is tied to this, that's tied to that, this tied. But then you go home to the same spouse, to the same kids, in the same house, eating the same food, listening to the same television show. And the work that we did in an hour or 90 minutes very quickly gets put right back to our current reality, and everything that was done is gone until the next time we're together. And then we just kind of take a step back, but then, and so I knew that I believed I believed that the best way for someone to change perspective is to get out of the reality they're in. Physically, go somewhere new so that you are not going back to your same normal reality, and your brain has a chance to wire in a different way. And so if it's over days period of time of a different perspective of looking at life in a different way, that's a lot easier for that to have a stronghold, and then continuing through community or coaching for that to have some grounding, there's a lot more likeliness for that to take place rather than just in an hour session and back to your life you go. So that was always my ultimate goal, and that was work. Finding, especially coming back to California, I was born and raised in Southern California, so it was always my goal to leave Washington and get back here. And finding, as you know, finding land in the state of California that is affordable, that was harder than I thought. That was every bit as hard as getting hired in the fire department. That was more challenging than what I thought it would be. So
So, how long did you look before you found the 20-acre property that you have in Julian now?
3 years. So I lived in Northern California for about a year. I lived in Laguna Beach for about a year, and I lived in Central California, Atascadero, Paso Robles area for about a year, looking in those areas, those all 3 vicinities for anything that would work. I had given up, and because I am a big fan of Hallmark, I thought, "You know what I need to do? I need to move to Vermont, and I'm gonna buy a bed and breakfast that I'm gonna turn into a retreat center, and it is gonna be the most amazing magic, and the town is gonna come together on a Saturday night at the hoedown, and we're all gonna talk about how life has all new meaning." And I had booked with a realtor homes to go to, or bed and breakfast in Vermont to go see. And my whole family, friends, Michelle, you've never lived back east. What are you even doing right now? Everything you have is on the West Coast. And I said, well, I've tried and I can't make it work. And Hallmark is not going to lie to me. So I must be off to Vermont. And someone said, if you're looking for 4 seasons and middle of nowhere Vermont, at least go check out Julian. And I said, well, I would, but that is a land that you have just made up. And they said, no, there's a place actually called Julian, an hour east of San Diego. And I said, well, I'm fairly certain I would have heard of it by now. But I looked it up, and sure enough, Julian did exist. Called a realtor, and I said, because I remember I was booked with this person in Vermont. I said, you have one day. I will drive there. You have one day, and that's it. And if this doesn't work, that's it. I'm going to call Hallmark and say, time to start a new series called Michelle Opens a Retreat Center. And this, where I am now, was the very last place we looked at that day. And that was it.
What was it about that property that resonated most with you?
The view. The view. It is so expansive that, and the thing that I love about it, and I'm so grateful that it translated, is that when people get here, they say 50% of my stress is gone from the second I got out of the car. So, you're surrounded with trees and the, Vulcan Mountain and the mountains off in a distance, and you have a 360-degree view. I'm up on the top of a mountain and birds everywhere and deer. And this morning I was out watering and I had two little foxes come up and think, well, we're going to help water. Actually, they wanted to play in the water. So you're in the middle of wildlife. I mean, you're only an hour from San Diego and a true four seasons. We get snow. The leaves are now changing color. So even though an hour from San Diego, the fact that there's snow is shocking, right? We're at 4,800 feet, and it's a couple of days. It's not like it's not Big Bear by any stretch, and it's a little town. There's one stop sign. There's not even a street light signal. So it really does feel, when you're driving through this town, you feel like you're on the set of a Hallmark movie. So it wound up being perfect.
Amazing. How many years did it take you to create what you now have in terms of a retreat center? Like the architecture, the buildings, the landscaping, your vision of it. Like, how long did this take?
So we were set to open on the first round of construction, if you will, May of 2020, which most people would mark with, oh, that's also the start and the kickoff of COVID, which that was the end of that. So that was a very trying time in my life, because for those of us that believe everything happens for a reason, why would I put all of my money and my savings and my retirement and max out credit cards for this to happen? And it wasn't just getting through COVID, because then the next round was people saying, I'm not going to go unless people are wearing masks. And the other people saying, I'm not going to go if anybody's wearing a mask. So then there was a whole nother year after that where it was just too tumultuous, that it was too political. It was too much to be in a let's come together environment, even in 2023, to make that relaxing. That was just going to add stress, which was the opposite of what I wanted to do. So I actually had this place up for sale and moved to Mexico. Yeah, I sure did. Said, that's it. I can't. This is heartbreaking to me. And I mean, what I'm preaching to you about your health, and that when the core of you is wrong, everything falls apart. And so I was in Mexico and I got a call from my naturopathic doctor. I went and had blood work done right before I left. And she called and said, I have no idea how you're still standing. Yep, your numbers are all, as we know, adrenal fatigue are in the complete tank, and you should have been here a long time ago. And so I lived there for 4 months, came back and sat and had a conversation with her. And she said, I shouldn't be the one to have to tell you this, but when your whole world is tied to, this is my mission in life and my purpose and my calling, and it gets yanked away from you, there's a big part of you that felt that you were yanked away from you and you didn't know how to replace that, or if you financially could. And so it's kind of a spiritual soul death. And, when that gets mirrored back to you, I just fell apart. And I mean, which doesn't happen for this girl very often, and said, you are right. And I have to find a way. I'm never going to, never rebuilding another place again. I'll tell you that. This is a lot of the things. What would I do different, or what do I wish I knew? Which is why I am the biggest proponent to find a coach, find a mentor, find someone who has done what you want to do, so they can ask you questions that you wouldn't know to ask. There's 100. I get asked all the time, oh, I'd love to open a retreat center. Great, let's talk. Let's talk, because I'll ask you a series of questions to make sure before you go down that road that I wish somebody would have asked me. But nonetheless, came back and did a little bit more construction, made it even more to what my ideal was. And then, believe it or not, this year was kind of our grand opening. So
Amazing.
here we
Amazing.
are.
What are some of those questions that you would ask someone? A few just off the top of your head. If somebody goes, yeah, I want to open a retreat center.
Great. You and who else? How many people do you have? How many people do you think it's going to take to run? Because I am head of construction, head of landscaping. I'm the retreat leader, right? I'm the head marketer. I'm head of sales. I'm head of web design and development. I'm head of social media and social media strategy. So, as Zip, my PTSD dog, would tell you, I'm the head of animal control. All the animals would tell you I'm head of feeding them all daily. So if you are the head of all of that, everything can get done to about 10%. Or one thing can get done effectively, and then the other 90% is just going to fall apart. And so the reality is you have to be very clear about how much time you have, what your expertise is, what you should be doing, and do you have the finances to hire the rest of it? Because it's impossible. You can't be all things to all people all the time. And so that was the biggest lesson learned is when you own and run and host retreats at a retreat center, you're not at a retreat. When people come here and say, "Oh my gosh, you must love to be in the hammock or on these hanging chairs." And I was yesterday I had a photographer here and I was sitting in the hammock and she was looking at lighting for your magazine, by the way. And so looking at lighting, I said, "Just so you know, this is the second time in 7 years I've sat in this hammock. The first time was to make sure it wouldn't break. And now, because this isn't my, I go away, right? This is my work. So this is for other people. This is what I do. When I'm here, I'm constantly looking where I said standard of excellence. What could things be better? What could this experience do or be to offer somebody a greater sense of peace or a greater sense of wonder or a greater sense of inspiration? And so my mind is always working in that way when I'm here. It's not laying on a hammock without a care in the world. No, I'm laying there going, I wonder if I need another hammock. Maybe there should be 2 or 3 right here. So different perspective.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I relate to this so much. So good. So good. Inner North Star Retreat Center is what you have named your beautiful location. I want to hear a couple of things. One, I want to hear about just the physical property because I know that you have created kind of these different lands, these different sections for people. You talked about the hammock. 20 acres, that's a big piece of property. How much access do people have when they come to the retreat center to all of those acres? Is it more condensed to a certain area? Talk to me about the physical structures. I mean, take me there. We'll put pictures, of course, in the text version of this interview. But if people are just watching or listening now, like paint a picture of what this beautiful retreat center is like.
Thank you. So I appreciate that. Thank you for asking about this because it is my pride and joy. And we are only open end of spring, summer, and beginning of fall. Because, like I said, this is a true 4 seasons. So for the other half of the year, it because this place is meant to be enjoyed outside. You really couldn't go outside. So we have about a month left, and then that will be it for this season. So the different areas that you are referring to, I have always been a big fan, and the person that I really wish if I could have been born at a different time, it would have been during his era, would have been to get to know personally Walt Disney. Not just for his vision, which he is an incredible visionary, but the amount of people and times he was told no, and that won't work, and that's a dumb idea, and no one's going to come. And what is the point of a theme park? People just want to go on rides. And he stuck to his vision and his plan. And another line that Walt is, well known for is when they said, will Disneyland ever be done being built? Will it ever be finished? And he said, Disneyland will never be finished as long as there is creativity left in the world. And anybody that's here, whenever I say, oh, and I'm finally done, everybody laughs going, oh, for this week? Okay, sure you are. So the thing that I love about Disneyland, I used to, and my daughters now, 28 and 31 years old, my daughters thought it was the silliest thing that I used to have an annual pass. I used to live in Orange County, I told you, Laguna Beach. And I would have an annual pass and I would take my laptop and go in and sit on Main Street and just work there all day just to watch the kids walk in. The wonderment and the amazement and the thrill and awe of it. And then the parents have a day away because their kid is just thrilled. And no matter what is going on in their world, and you know that every one of them has a story, every one of them has a challenge, every one of them has something going on. And for that day, that was left out at the gate. For that day, it was a day to celebrate. It was a day just to have fun and remember joy and playfulness as a family. And that was a big driver for me for this place was I want you to come here and have so many different areas that are truly unique and different experiences that you're not thinking about your life. You're not thinking about the problems that you have or the challenges or whatever it is that's going on. And so if I can break that pattern, if I can get you away from that, then it's a lot easier, like I said before, to reframe and have a different perspective, because it's almost impossible to be here and not have a shift of perspective. I have an entire fairy garden area that, ironically, the people that spend the most time in the fairy garden are men. And I'm not kidding. It's a little seating area, and there's little fairy figurines all over and walking paths. And so if there's a couple, a guy and a gal, or there's a group, the gals will all leave, and there'll be a guy or a couple of guys still sitting there. Yeah, we're going to catch up. Yeah, we'll be right there, without fail. And I think part of that is because, men are men, and you have a requirement, and you're the provider, and you have to get things done, and the jack of all trades. And very rarely do you have the opportunity to play, to let go, or to even reflect back to what that was like. And I think that for people, that's what it does. Is there's a bit of nostalgia, there's a bit of whimsy with that. Right across from that is a meditation area. We have 15 different seating areas all over the property. I have a regulation size bocce ball court, horseshoes, ladder toss. I mean, there's all kinds of things. You could have 20 people on this property and never see each other. So it's fun things to do. It's areas that make you tap into a part of your life maybe you had forgotten about or have neglected. Or there's just the seating areas with the views that I'm thankful enough to be enjoying right now as we speak. That again, breathing in the fresh air and seeing the nature and listening to the trees and the animals walking by gets you out of everything that you know to be true, and to say what's possible. And when you have the vastness of the view, I think that really does hearken to that of what is in my future? What's possible for me? What's out there that's not just within these four walls that I'm used to sitting at in my little office?
Why did you call the retreat center Inner North Star?
That goes back 20 years. This has been the name of my business for over 20 years now, was a meditation. And I said, I've got to have something there's got to be a name to my business, to what I do, that in a name would say everything. So, once again, in my never ending, I talk to God all the time, and we have always had a very strong relationship. All right, so I'm going to just sit here in meditation and hand it to me, and I won't question it, whatever it is. Here we go. And so, no kidding, it was maybe 5 or 10 minutes in, and I believe to the core of my soul that whatever the struggle is, whatever the problem or challenge is, you have that answer. Whatever it is you're meant to be in life, wherever you're meant to go, whatever that mess, you have that. Whatever you need in life, you have. It's not outside of you. I'm thankful you and I are here chatting today, and I'm grateful beyond measure that somebody's listening to us and getting inspired maybe to look within or go on an adventure or do something. But the reality is, the biggest reminder I hope they have is whatever you need, you have. You have. And so guidance, we all know, is the North Star, right? That's your true north. If you're out and lost, if you're a Boy Scout or you go camping or whatever it is, okay, if I'm looking for direction, I know I can always find true north, and I can count on that. And no matter where I am in the world, it will always be the same. It will always guide me in the right direction. And so if you were to think about if that's always right and always true and always accurate, always pointing you in the right direction, you have that inside you. This inner North Star is that your right and true path and purpose and calling and meaning is there. You just have to tap into it, but it's there.
Beautiful. Talk to me about the retreats that you host there. Are these retreats that you are personally putting on each retreat, or is this a place for people to, as a leader, come and host their retreats at this location? What are the options?
You can. That's a brand new option. That has never been the case. And so when I said that we're just really, this is the grand kickoff, I've held retreats over the last 7 years. It has just been in between doing things. So when a little construction project gets done, then we'll hold a couple more retreats. This now, I really am mostly done. So now we really are full open schedule. So that is a new thing. That was never an option before. But going forward, so for next year, you could get a hold of me and say, hey, here's my vision. Maybe it's a leadership retreat. right? You could have 5 executives from Microsoft want to just come and do a brainstorming session, or your annual kickoff meeting of goal setting. Or you could be yourself and wanting to have some key folks within your community come here and you want to host a retreat. So, whatever somebody would like to do is possible here. But yes, primarily these are my retreats, and they are split between. I don't know if we've talked about this or not. I have a nonprofit side where I do PTSD retreats for female veterans and first responders. And there is, believe it or not, probably an 80% overlap in what goes on there versus what goes on in what you would consider the private sector, in being here for health and wellness or finding your purpose. Because so much of that, here's the two things they're rooted in: stress reduction, because you're never going to live into your fullest life if you're in survival mode, if you're living with fear, if you're living with doubt, if stress rules your every thought. That we have to handle that. We have to handle that. And that's what I started 20 years ago as a stress reduction therapist, right? In biofeedback. And PTSD, it's the same. So those two are backbones to everything that goes on here. And the secondary thing that they both have in common is having a purpose and meaning in life. So when our mind gets mired in repetitive thoughts, whether it's that it could be childhood abuse, it could be something that happened while you were on a tour of duty, you could be a first responder and a bad call you were on. It doesn't matter. You could have had a bad marriage. You could just have a job you don't like. All that is wiring, where it's the replay, the replay, the replay. And it's what needs to be done to break that loop so that our mind is not focused on the past, that we are forward looking. And I'm not acknowledging that has happened, but we're taking the charge of those emotions down so it doesn't have control over us. They're still there. They just don't control us anymore. And now that opens up that energy and that space to say, okay, who am I and what am I here for? What is my purpose and mission in life? And so they're, believe it or not, they're very, very similar in structure. But we do, biofeedback, heart rate variability. I have headpieces that you put on that help with creativity, and we have cold plunges, a hot tub. I mean, the list goes on. So from a health and wellness and really getting you body, mind, spirit as fine-tuned, high energy as we can get you. That's what I try to do here.
Mm-hmm. What is your ultimate desire, whether it's someone who's there for a leader who's bringing their own group for a retreat, or it's your retreat that you're putting on for veterans or first responders, or it's a mind, body, spirit health retreat? What is your ultimate vision, like your ultimate desire for that individual after they're there for 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, however long it is? What do you want them to go home with?
I see things differently now. I see things differently. I thought things were always this way. And I thought, because this is how I saw my life, this is how I saw me, this is all that my future could be. And when the perspective of who we are and the meaning changes of events that have happened in the past, then the possibility is infinite for what can happen in the future. So that for me is the most important thing, is a change of perspective to go from really limiting thinking to limitless possibility.
Mm-hmm. On top of the retreat center, you also offer one-on-one coaching, personal coaching, online courses. Talk to us about some of these other ways that people could interact with you to say, okay, well, maybe I live far away. I'm not necessarily in a season of life where I can jump into a retreat, but I'd love to engage with this inspiration, this motivation, this wisdom that you're bringing to the table, Michelle. What are some of the ways that people can work with you?
Thank you for asking. This is really, I'm very proud of this place. I've obviously gone on and on about it, but even every bit as much, this online course takes 20 years of everything I've done, everything we're talking about, and this is the point of this course. Is my goal out of these 6 modules is you will know why you're here. without a doubt. You will absolutely, hands down, know why you're here, what your meaning and your purpose is for your life. You'll also know why things have been holding you back in life, right? There's some sort of value alignment. You and I both have a lot of the same people in mind, which is why I'm here. I appreciate and love the work that you do and the work that you are doing in this world. I know your normal person is needing help to get their voice out there. And we need to have all these voices and these stories and people to get out there. And you can give someone a microphone and give someone a platform, and then they get stuck. And if they don't have a community like yours to say, okay, keep going, here's my mentorship, you've got it, right? Is there has to be a values assessment to say what matters the most to you. And when your message matters more than any naysayer, than any fear of what someone's going to say, fear of a camera, fear of a microphone, when you are so clear with why you're here, then, right, then we're going to get out of our way. But that values alignment is very important. Is if it's going to matter somebody's nonsensical opinion that not only have you never met, but you will never meet, if that opinion matters more to you than you getting your voice out, you're going to stay stuck. So we have to get clear with our values so that you can get that word out there. And then the other modules are how to listen to messengers. They show up in our life all the time. You showed up that way in my life. I mean, we have a very odd, interesting connection in that when I started my podcast 9 years ago, I can remember this gentleman, Corey, who every single show wrote to me. Every single show. Thank you so much for that podcast. You're such a great inspiration. And if you have one person that believes in you, that's all you need. If you have one person that says, good job, keep going, that meant everything to me. And that person I know we have in common. And when this connection happened, I thought, well, that's not a mistake. Thank you again, Corey, here for bringing this together. And I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to support you because my online course, your community, what you're doing, we're all doing the same thing of saying your message matters. Get it out there. Get it out there. Know your why. Know why it matters to you. Make sure that that's truly what you value more than anything, and then be unstoppable with it. And so I appreciate you and the work you're doing more than you could imagine, because I know so many people that are doing great work that no one knows of. And how can you be the very best that you can be and stay hidden?
Mm-hmm.
Right? The very best you can be is to help as many people as possible. And so your magazine and your podcast and your books and everything you're doing is imperative for people to say, okay, I have a first step. I can do this. I can do this with David's counsel and guidance. And I can, it's that first step, right? Day one is not running a marathon. Day one is put the shoes on and walk around the block, get going. And so I think that both you and I share that passion of the world needs a lot more goodness right now. And the world needs whatever your message of goodness and help and support and wisdom is. Don't let anything hold you back. Now is the time. It couldn't be more easy. Podcasting 9 years ago, holy cow, it was work. And, now shoot, a laptop, earphones, a microphone, and away you go. So
Yeah.
it's now's the time. Now's the time. Don't wait.
You talked about your online course. I'm curious about your coaching because as I hear you speak, the way that you communicate, not only are you obviously incredibly eloquent, but I feel this sense of um, belief in other people. Like that comes through so strongly. Like you just believe in people. You believe, you haven't said this, but the underlying assumption is that you believe that every single person has a purpose. Every single person has a calling. I believe that too. I hear that resonating through you. I also hear this rootedness in you, this like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm grounded. I'm like, there's a security there. And you also have a playfulness that kind of comes through. So How could people work with you if they were looking for individual support, like one-on-one coaching? Is that something that you offer? Do you bring that to the table as well?
That not so much anymore. So that's what I would consider more of a VIP day. So
Mhm.
that's a little more on the high end of coming here in person. That requires that you've already gone through the course, first of all,
Mhm.
because we don't want to waste your money or my time in going over things that's the foundation. This is how the world works. This is what's going on. If you're going to come here for a day, we are going to go through so that you have an exact roadmap for the next at least year of your life of everything you're doing and why, so that you truly are unstoppable. But that, like I said, is a bit more on the high end side.
Mhm.
And people know, there are people that know I'm done wasting time and nothing is going to get in my way. And I could drag this out over the next few months, or I could go spend a day or 2 days with Michelle, and then that's it. I'm pulling the trigger and I'm going. That's who this is for. So it's certainly not for everybody, but here's another one that is more for everybody, is not just the online course, which is very accessible, very doable. There's not one person that's ever gone through it that said they didn't know their purpose, didn't have it change their life, didn't have understanding messengers and how to work with the energy of the world, that there's no mystery to it, better decision making. So there's that. But the other one is I also have just kicked off a community, so I am at a minimum once a month in that community doing a live, like we're talking right here, chatting, and then live Q&A calls. So there is access to me on these monthly topics, and then all of those are recorded. So all of that information is there. That's all on everything that we're talking about, right? How to live your best life, how to live into that negotiation of, if I truly were to be here doing the very best thing I could be doing every single day with my life and serving others in the highest degree possible, what does that look like? And then taking action on it.
Wonderful. Well, we will link to the Inner North Star community and the online course, and obviously the retreat center, just to have people have it in their minds. What would be the best place to reach out to you in terms of that website or social media to be able to take that next step?
Everything is under my name. So anywhere you want to go, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, anywhere, except for Pinterest. I'm not there yet. But everywhere else, if you just put my name in, I will pop up. And my website, so there's two, and this is a very recent split. So Michelle Dutro is me, retreats that I am hosting, the podcast, books that I have out, anything that I have going on. If you're part of the community, you'll get notification whenever I'm going live. If there's a discount or a special or something that I'm doing here at the retreat center, my community is always the first to know about it. That said, Inner North Star, which is innernorthstar.com, is the physical property. So if you want to, hey, I'm a retreat leader, or I'm the CEO of a company and I'm looking for a getaway place close to Orange County, San Diego, and I just want to see more of the actual physical property itself and what it offers, and photographs and pictures that has nothing to do with this girl, then that's innernorthstar.com. And so, like I said, my branding has been very interwoven. And so I thought, okay, since I now am allowing anyone else to rent out this property, I need to separate myself from it. So Inner North Star will get you the property itself. Michelle Dutro will get you everything that I have currently going on and will have going on in the future. So
And when you don't have retreats that are happening on the property, I know you just recently listed the property on Airbnb so that people could access it there as well. Is that correct?
that's correct. So, yeah, I had forgotten about that too. Boy, it's a good thing you are on top of everything that is going. I need you more in my life. Yes, that is absolutely true. So when there isn't anything booked, then you can book this place out just for maybe that couple's getaway. Maybe that, I'm going to bring my yoga mat and I'm going to do a little yoga retreat for myself. Then book the place and have all 20 acres and enjoy. Absolutely.
Which could be an actual amazing location. I don't know if you allow this. Maybe I'm promoting something you don't allow, is for photo shoots for people that want to stay overnight and do incredible content creation with that incredible view.
Right, absolutely. And another big one, and I haven't marketed this at all, and I really should be, but when you hear about elopements, or people are renewing vows, so instead of going to the courthouse, you could come here, have just 4 or 5 of your close personal friends. The first thing I built here, it may make no sense to other people. It made all the sense in the world to me. But the very first thing that I built here was a 1920s themed champagne room. It's that we have a vineyard here on the property as well. So there's a 1920s themed champagne room, and then adjacent to that is the Italy room. And it really is. I mean, it's a throwback velvet couch, chandeliers, glitter floor so that it makes you feel like you're standing in a glass of champagne. My rationale for that was that if you're ever coming here for a retreat, I believe that by the time you leave, you will be so crystal clear and know that your life is worth celebrating. And so at the end of every retreat, we would be in that champagne room and celebrate your new, exciting life and you and where you're headed and where you're going, because life is worth celebrating always. You are worth celebrating always. So that from a honeymoon suite would be a phenomenal thing for someone to, again, have access to for, maybe it's a 50th birthday or a 50th wedding anniversary. It's endless opportunity. As Walt would tell you, the possibilities are endless here. So you're going to think this is silly, but in everything that I do, when I do have a round table of mentors in my head all the time. He sits at my table. Is every time there was a new area, I would sit on a rock with Walt and say, Walt, here's my idea. What am I missing? What else would you be doing here that I have not thought of yet? And so I do believe that Walt is very proud of my 1920s themed champagne room. Yes. And all of those photos are on the website. Yes.
Wonderful. MichelleDutro.com. We will link to that as well as the Inner North Star Retreat Center website and all your social media accounts and your Airbnb display of the property. And so, Michelle, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you for what you're doing in the world. You are making such a big difference in people's lives, and the world is a better place because you're living out your purpose, you're living out your calling, and we appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for everything you do. I appreciate being here, and I know all of your listeners appreciate everything you're doing, and I hope everybody keeps listening. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Awaken Magazine podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and our other conversations, would you mind taking a moment to leave a 5-star review and maybe even a comment on Spotify or Apple Podcasts? That's one of the ways that you can give back to the show and help us reach more people. And of course, feel free to share the episode with a friend. And if you're not already on our email list, we send out an inspiring email every Monday morning full of articles and interviews. Just head on over to awakenedmagazine.com and click subscribe and join for free. Our hope is that all the resources we share will help our world continue awakening to love.